All right.
Welcome to the Beyond Fluency podcast. How you doing, Liam?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm well.
Yeah.
I'm well. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Weird to be filming in two different locations, but I'm used to us filming this together. So
Yes.
it's yeah.
Yes. I
But
mean,
other than that,
there is
I'm
a
good.
strategic reason for that, though, isn't there? Let's be honest. We've been having these Zoom conversations for more than a year, and it's actually a format that we're both very comfortable with now.
Yeah, that is
So,
true.
yeah,
It's also the
even
way we work.
yes, exactly. And I think the thing is it was a logistical nightmare trying to organize setting up a podcast studio in your living room once a month, uh, with
Yeah.
the fact that we both have kids and lives, and it there were always technical issues doing it every time without fail. And there was always something, and then we'd spend 2 hours trying to solve the technical issue in the moment instead of actually recording anything, and then the production on that kind of thing, the editing, all of it. It was like it became so overwhelming that we've spent a year trying to work out how to film a podcast when actually we could have just been filming our weekly conversations on Zoom. So here we are.
Yeah, yeah. No, it just as you were explaining it, I went sort of down memory lane. One of the things that you mentioned is running into a problem that required like 2 hours to solve, right?
Hmm.
And just about 10, 15 minutes after we had solved the problem, 5 or 10 minutes into recording, we're having a conversation and someone just knocks on the door,
Yeah.
like a neighbor.
Or there's a dog barking in the background constantly, which you can hear on the audio. Or our mics are too close together, so actually we're
Yeah,
picking up voices on both of them instead of isolating. And
yeah.
um, the what was the other one?
Oh, so
There
many.
was another one.
It's
I mean,
so many to
it was
pick
a
from.
plethora of
Yeah,
of problems. I love that
yeah,
word, plethora.
yeah.
uh,
Plethora.
it means a lot, basically. It means a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
I want to actually. You used a really nice phrase earlier, about going down memory lane.
Oh yeah, actually, I didn't
Yeah,
even realize that one.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
go down memory lane. Yeah, go down memory lane is to revisit usually a pleasant memory, right?
Yes, yeah.
I would I can't think of it in an example where that would be used to recall something negative. Like
No, I think
generally,
you're right.
yeah,
It's
just
usually positive
yeah,
nostalgia, isn't it?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the use of the phrase or implies whatever comes after this is going to be something enjoyable, pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So
basically,
lots of pleasant memories about uncomfortable situations.
I'd say funny situations rather than uncomfortable.
Well,
Some of
it.
them were funny. Looking
Yes.
back at the time,
Yes.
frustrating.
Oh,
Frustrating is a
absolutely.
word that comes to mind.
Yes.
Annoying is another one that comes to mind. Bothered is another one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
And maybe
definitely.
eventually, sort of gradually, depending on how long it took. This is more to describe you because I think I would be a little bit more patient about it. Um, I think the best way to describe it is you get to the point where you are pissed off, really,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I was fuming. That's
Yeah.
another one. There we go. We're covering all the adjectives for anger today.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
seems, right? It
I
seems we're
was
going to be
I was
discussing anger today.
I was
So,
absolutely fuming. Well, the thing for me is that I'm a very patient person, but I'm also someone that likes to keep moving. So it's it's just getting stuck in to a problem, a project, and taking action and being comfortable with the fact that it's not perfect. to get stuck in is like to immerse yourself in the work that you need to do and just get started.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's
Just
probably the
like,
best way to get to describe it. Yeah.
which is quite different from being stuck in a rut. Speaking of stuck,
Oh yeah, that's a good phrase.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you're
Slight
stuck in the
difference.
rut, you can't move. Uh,
Mhm.
you're literally positioned in the same place uh,
Yeah,
in your life to be stuck in a rut, isn't it?
yeah. You feel like you're not moving. You're not making any progress.
Yeah,
You,
exactly.
you're. I would say you could say to some degree you feel like you are stuck in a vicious circle. Could be another way to say it.
Yeah, vicious
Stuck in a
circle.
rut. Stuck
Mm-hmm.
in a vicious circle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is it, it's all about not moving anywhere in your life, which is very much how we felt before making this decision to switch the way that we wanted to film the podcast. I think we both
Yeah.
very much felt stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Uh,
In relation to the podcast,
mhm,
definitely. Um, we weren't making any progress, so we were certainly stuck in a rut.
mhm,
So that sometimes it's perhaps not a bad thing
mm,
because maybe that's what we needed to adjust our plans and work within the limitations of the time that we both have,
mhm.
of the free time that we both have.
Yeah, we're talking about time specifically, uh, but resources generally, I think, is probably because as we mentioned, we had lots of
Yes.
technical difficulties because we don't have the resources to have the studio and have the complicated mic set up and three cameras for positioning, which you look at most modern video podcasts and
Yes.
they've got all that, and we very much would like to get there, but that's all part of resources, and time as well is the only resource that you can't buy more of. What we've been able to do by changing the format, not only is change important when things aren't working, but we are creating the path of least resistance in helping us achieve our goals. Our goal is
Yeah.
to put out a weekly podcast. In order to do that, we've had to really strip back to what are the essential things for this podcast. So stripping back is, if you think about decorating, if we've got loads of wallpaper on the
Yeah.
walls, but actually you want to paint the walls, you don't really want to paint over wallpaper because then you've got whatever the pattern is underneath it. So you have to take the wallpaper away and get back to the wall so you can paint that. So stripping back the podcast to what's important, the most important thing about this is us having a natural conversation, having fun with it, and just recording it, essentially, right?
Yeah.
The
And people
content is the
listening to
most
it.
important part. So if you look at it from that perspective, the the getting started part, it's okay like this. We're still having good conversations. We're still talking about important subjects, but we're doing it in a more familiar environment. And that is, it frees us up to use and organize our time differently in order to, maybe do some other things like film some challenges and or
Yes. Yes.
be a bit more creative in the video aspect.
How this translates for anyone looking to listen, anyone who looking to further develop the speaking skills in English,
Mm-hmm.
who was obviously this is who we are making this podcast for.
Just
Interested
not
in,
just speaking, it's
yeah,
their English skills, full stop, but
stop, yeah.
life skills at the same time.
I was getting there. You
No,
know,
sorry,
Mister here
sorry.
he's very, very, very fired up this morning. I think I haven't seen him this fired up in months, and there isn't an ounce of exaggeration when
Fired
I
up,
say that.
motivated,
Yeah,
focused,
like just
excited.
like
Yeah.
it's been a while, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to see that. But yes, how this translates into language development or language learning is making use of whatever resources you already have at
Mhm.
the moment.
Simplifying is key. I speak to so many people who tell me, "Oh, English is easy grammatically." I'm like, yeah, it is. You can have a good grammatical structure in English by getting to intermediate level. But getting from intermediate to advanced or proficient is much more difficult because there are so many more nuances in the language that you're using. Grammatically doesn't change a lot. You're more adding fine tuning to the grammar that you already have. So your fine tuning is what we use when we talk about machinery,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah,
you think about a sports car, the fine tuning is rotating one of the screws in the engine 2 or 3 millimeters in order to maximize the performance of that engine,
yeah. I
right?
have a certain result. Yeah,
Exactly. And that is how I see grammar in terms of English. The difficulty is the thousands of variations of phrasal verbs, the the colloquial language, the idioms, the collocations. Collocations is something people just don't spend enough time on, in my opinion. It's
it's
knowing what the
language
verb, noun,
charts.
and adjective combinations are to say
Yeah.
the right phrase instead of just
What would
translating,
be
right?
what would be an example of a collocation?
Okay, I want to invite you to go for a coffee. Would I say, let's make a coffee, do a coffee, or get a coffee?
Let me say, let's get a coffee.
Let's get a coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
We wouldn't make a coffee. We're only making a coffee if we're physically performing the action. If
Yeah, yeah.
if it's an invitation, it's get, right?
Yeah.
So
That's an example of
understanding
it.
the difference between those is a very important part of language.
And that's an example of a collocation, as you said
Yeah, there
before.
you go.
Get a coffee. All right.
Hmm.
So a combination usually of
Hmm.
verb and noun, name of an object, thing, person.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah. So the what were where were we? We were talking about simplifying things. So you
simplifying
simplify,
things.
yeah, you simplify it by doing things like that.
Hmm.
Doing simple things that you're able to commit to uh, at short intervals at a time. As you said, the path of least resistance. You just
Hmm.
keep make it easier and easier for yourself to say yes to that thing all the time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Think about this as another example of the path of least resistance. You want to learn to play the guitar, for
Yeah.
example. Yeah. If you leave your guitar in its guitar case inside your wardrobe, what are the chances that you're going to think, I'm going to play guitar now? They're very small because it's hidden from plain sight.
Yeah.
In order for you to create the path of least resistance to do that thing that you want to do, you need to put your guitar out of its case somewhere you know you're going to see it. If you have a living room, put it next to the television so when you sit down and think about turning on the television, you can see your guitar and go, I haven't done my guitar practice today. So you
Yeah.
will more likely to pick up
Yeah.
the guitar.
You know that I've actually put to practice. That's a
Mm-hmm.
thing that I would urge everyone to do. Every single person who listens or and as well as watch the podcast is test these theories, test our advice or
Mm-hmm.
recommendations. This one I've tested personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I suppose it was a time because something that both you and I have in common is maybe we pick up something new and then we don't know much about it. We find out about it and we just go deep and deep into it and read
Right.
more and more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So a while back, I don't know exactly when, but I was probably a lot younger than I am now, probably in my 20s. Maybe it's then, probably during university, I learned about Feng Shui. I heard the word and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, this is a fascinating concept. And then I read a little bit about it. Um, I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but I learned enough to say, or I read enough anyway, to say, okay, let me put this into practice. So again, I'm not an expert. So if I've left something out of the definition, forgive me, and please add it below the link with your comments.
Hmm.
But from what I understood, it's essentially the range, the spatial arrangement of a place has a huge influence on how we feel and how productive we cannot be, supposedly.
Can I probably know a little bit more about this because of my background. Feng
Yeah.
Shui is how you control your environment to create the path of least resistance towards a particular goal.
Yeah.
So for example, if your goal is to be healthier, how you create your environment around you to make sure that it is optimized for good health. If
And
you if you want to improve your career, you can set things up to improve your career as well.
okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. What about you, man? How's your Italian lessons? How are your Italian lessons coming along? Because
Uh
you're also on a language learning path.
true. Yes.
Mm.
I I've struggled a bit, if I'm honest, since this year I had to go back to the UK for 2 months to work because where we are in Italy, the summer months are very quiet. After spending 2 months in England, working various teaching jobs, I had 2 months of not speaking any Italian. So
Yeah,
coming back at the beginning of September, it was a real shock.
you're a bit rusty.
Totally rusty, completely lost my confidence as well. Uh, I was up until the end of June. I would say May and June, I was really beginning to see improvement because I was consistently putting myself into situations where I had to speak the language, and I felt
Which I was
confidence
going to ask.
coming from that, right?
I wanted to ask you the question because
Hmm.
I think it's perhaps a lot of the listeners will be able to relate to you
Hmm.
because, as you know, with what we do, a lot of the times people struggle with that, the confidence. How did you, and then that led me to believe that maybe it's something you develop, the confidence. And I thought about when I was learning as well
Yeah,
and how it started. So how do you think you develop the confidence?
it's repetition. It's like going to the gym. It's
Yeah,
you
you've got
you
to
don't you
speak.
don't get a six pack in 2 weeks. If that's what your goal
Unfortunately,
is to, well, you might. You've quite lean, aren't you? There's not
I
there's
might
there's not much
in
there's not much
6
body
weeks.
fat on ramps. I can tell you that for a fact.
How do you know? Hmm.
Well, because you have this habit of not wearing any clothes in the summer. Well, top up
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
whenever we chat on Zoom, you're usually half naked.
It's true. In the
Yeah,
summer, yeah, as minimum amount of clothing as possible. You know, just the areas that need to be covered.
right.
That's pretty much
Exactly. For polite conversation.
basically right.
Yeah. Yeah.
People so
Yeah.
that people don't
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This is my bit
Yeah.
for for society.
Yeah. But
Um.
yeah, exactly. So
So
yes,
you lost practice. Yeah.
getting a six pack is like going to the gym. It takes you months and months and months of hard work and not seeing much change until you see the end result. And that's what it was like for me with my Italian. I really I really made an effort from January to April to do my practice increase the amount of time I spent per day doing the practice at home, and then start putting myself into situations where I had to speak.
I
I I had
have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I keep interrupting, and I'm sorry, but I'm just thinking like a listener. Um,
Hmm.
why did you say do my practice as opposed to just saying I practiced?
I use language that's related to taking action.
Because you want to highlight it. You
Yeah,
want to highlight the practice. So
exactly.
anytime we use do like that in the affirmative
Hmm.
is to highlight whatever verb that comes afterward. If you're making an affirmative statement,
Hmm.
the do is optional, right?
Yes, it's one of those language points that we often don't
Nuance
think about
about, yeah,
as native speakers.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's what we were saying before, right? We want, it's not just simple language communication, but it's also looking at things
Hmm.
like that,
Hmm.
subtle nuance, the differences between two things. Um, essentially the same words being used, but an additional word um, giving a lot more information
Mm.
about that. So I
Yeah.
do my practice. I clearly understand, okay, this is something that's probably a habit, something that they set time to do apart. So they set time apart to
Yeah, I
do.
think you put it perfectly. It's very
Yeah.
intentional. What you've described is exactly right. But when I was saying for me, I use language where I, for taking an action, is because I have a kinesthetic aspect to
Language
my
learning.
my learning. Yeah, exactly. So for me, I'm kinesthetic visual. So whenever I talk about learning, when I talk about studying, often you will hear either visual related verbs and phrases or action related verbs and phrases because that's how I process things. I think if you know
Interesting.
anything about neuro linguistic programming, which is a coaching technique on how to adapt and change particular behaviors that you might have, it goes into this idea of we use language based on how we process things. So whenever you're asking someone to talk
Hmm.
about a memory or something they've learned in any situation, whether they're um, audio, visual, or kinesthetic, they will use language based on how they process the world. So
I'll be
now,
more mindful of it. By the way,
exactly.
sorry.
Yep.
If you did, if some of the words that Liam used were a bit confusing, kinesthetic, audio, auditory, etc.
If you want an explanation, go back and watch our other video
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on
Which
language
watch?
learner types
Yeah,
and
that's
what
the
you can
very first
do
video.
for them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing
Making it
your
easier.
language learner type, knowing how you learn, how you understand the world, and then choosing activities that play to that strength, play to that way of processing, is you're making it easier for yourself. You're making it
Yeah.
easier to accumulate knowledge and experience and continue to improve. Doing those things is going to help you continue to improve so that when you have to do more difficult things that maybe aren't your areas of strength, it's easier to do them because you've got the combined weight of all of the practice that's come to that point.
Confidence.
Yeah,
That's what you were saying before, right?
exactly. You've
Like
got to
the
build it up.
confidence, yeah, will come from all the things you did before.
Mhm. In general, that's the same for most people. Of course, you're going to at either end of the spectrum, you're going to have people who are less confident even after trying something and more confident even when trying
Confident,
something
yeah.
for the first time. But for the majority of people, we sit in the middle. Confidence grows from doing things repetitively. Mm.
So when it comes to language learning, how do we simplify it? I think we start with time, as we talked about today.
And we go full circle back to the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because what we spoke about today is our trouble was with time,
yeah.
right? Finding the right time consistently every month and being able to dedicate that time to accomplishing this task,
Mhm.
right? So I think the first thing we simplify it by less time.
This is why I tell people start with 5 minutes per day, but it's the important part is doing it every day. It doesn't matter
Wow.
if you're doing it at the same time every day. It doesn't matter if one day you do 15 minutes and the minimum commitment is 5 minutes per day. That's just watching one short video from BBC News on something. That's just spending 5 minutes talking to ChatGPT, which is a fantastic resource for practicing your speaking, but we can go into that another time. It's 5 minutes is reading one article about something. You don't have to spend a long time, but the consistency, doing it every day, is what keeps you progressing. Some days you'll do more than others, but you set your minimum standard and then you stick to that. 5 minutes isn't a big commitment. You're
Well,
gonna
I
you
think you
in the
may have
long run,
convinced me.
you're gonna learn more from your consistency than you are from the total amount of time that you spend studying.
I think you may have convinced me.
Mm.
You may have
Uh,
convinced me.
that's the simplicity. That's the path of least resistance. It is
So
keeping it small.
simplify it
If you
by
if
so
five
hold on.
minutes is too much, 2 minutes. But
No, 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 no. I think now we're pushing it. 5 minutes is I
I
I'm
I'm
allowing.
no, I'm going to interrupt you now because actually committing to 2 minutes usually means that you do more. If you commit to doing 2 minutes, you'll do 2 minutes, but actually will turn into five in most instances because it takes 2 minutes of concentration on the task. You get started on something. That's usually enough to continue doing it. Just start small, add a minute every week. That's the compound
Perfect.
effect.
Even better. Even better. Even
you
better.
you know whether you're going to be able to do 2 minutes or 5 minutes. Most people can do 5 minutes, but don't overthink it. Start with
All right.
two.
So we've got time simplification, right? We sort of
Mm-hmm.
simplify it by dedicating an amount of time that best suits your current
Yeah,
schedule, how busy you are.
yeah,
Okay. So I mean, if we can, if you can start with 2 minutes, we clearly have taken away the limitations of time. Doesn't
right,
matter. The quantity doesn't matter. Is the quality of the time, right?
exactly. Yeah,
So that's the first thing we do by peeling it away, peeling off all the complexities and making it simpler. Time.
yeah.
Second thing, I would say, what would you say
Location,
then? Like, pardon?
location.
Look, location. All right, that's okay.
You
You
in this modern age, you do not need to be at your desk to study.
okay. So take away the ideal location. It doesn't have to be the set time and a set place.
Everyone needs to go to the toilet. If you have a healthy bowel movement, you should be going every day, right? Turn that into your study time, right?
Maximizing your time. That's what you do right there.
Yeah.
That's
Stop
maximum.
scrolling on TikTok or Facebook or social media. Use that time in a constructive way. Come on, we're all
All right.
adults here. Like
Okay. So that's the
everyone has to
second.
poo. It happens, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta drop the kids off.
Drop the kids off at the pool.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta
Yeah.
drop the kids off to the pool.
Drop the
What did
kids
the
off.
Americans? What did the Americans say again? Drop the Jones off at the Super Bowl or something like that. Something.
I
I
have no
there's some
idea. I've
there's
only
something about the
drop
Super
the
Bowl.
kids off at the pool is a common one though.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are many euphemisms for taking a
Isn't for
poo.
the
Yeah.
yeah. I think something like drop the Browns at the Super Bowl. Something like that.
Right. Okay.
I'm not sure. Someone might really correct me here in
No,
the
no. The
comment
Cleveland
section.
Browns are an American football team. The Super Bowl is a bowl is
Yeah,
another way to describe a toilet. So
it makes
uh,
sense
it makes
probably.
sense. It makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
No, no, I've heard it once. Twice. I thought that was quite a. I liked it.
Mm. Stay
Because if
tuned. Beyond Fluency, teaching you all about ways to talk about pooing.
it,
we we
it's
started so
culture.
well and we ended up literally, we ended up in the toilet.
In the toilet.
In the
Quite,
toilet.
quite, quite,
Yeah.
quite literally in the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, wait. So time, remove limitations of place,
Yeah.
right? You can do it
Hmm.
almost anywhere and everything. And I
Hmm.
think the third thing that I would add is variation, and which is what you mentioned already.
Hmm.
Um, use AI to have conversations,
Yeah.
read, listen to things,
Hmm.
watch things, a combination of it, right? Or where you are developing a different set of skill. I would say a complete week would be aiming to develop something in listening, to develop listening, speaking, writing,
Yeah. You have
and
to
reading skills.
try and touch on all the skills.
Yeah,
Uh, but
through your sort
especially,
of self
but
study.
there's 7 days a week. You need to touch on each skill at least once. But then the one that you struggle with, you should look at.
Double down on that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And spend more
Yeah.
time on that. If it's listening, do 3 different listening exercises.
That's the best problem to have,
Yeah.
I
And
think,
what I
in
would
learning
say as
language
well,
learning.
what I would say
Yeah.
is you have 6 days of skills practice and then one review day.
Yes.
Review
This is
everything that
something
you've covered that week.
that's something I've been recommending a lot to my clients lately.
Hmm.
And I would need to check in with some of them, if not all of them,
Hmm.
where day number 6 is review day. I've done 5, 5 out of 7.
Right,
5 days, and day number 6 being the review. And it's a journal, an English journal entry. And they just write as a weekly reflection of what they've done that week,
right.
in what areas they felt that they improved, what areas they still feel they need to improve,
Hmm.
what are the new words and new expressions. It's sort of, yeah, a
Yeah, I
journal
like I
entry
like that
of
idea
whatever length.
actually because it's
Yeah,
reflective. Not only
yeah,
you're trying to think about the technical aspect of what you've learned, the specific vocabulary, etc. Maybe trying to
exactly.
use it or understand it, but you're
Yeah, yeah,
actually your thought process is in English, and at higher levels, this is the area that you want to really fine
you want to
tune.
get the, yeah,
Yeah,
it,
come back
it
to fine tune. Well, Ramps, what's left to say is thank you very much for your time and your conversation today.
thank you too. I'm crap at goodbye, so I'll just say cheers.
All right, thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.